So this is part 2 of the conversation. And we now pick up where we left off with the practice of finding in our felt sense where you stop and where someone else, or where it stops being you in your exteroception. And as you're doing that practice, and if you keep doing it, you might have noticed that it's really hard to find where you stop in those perceptions. When you project your senses outwards, your senses are giving you information about the world, but in the end, that information is filtering back into you. And so, as you continue doing the practice, when you look out at the world, if you look at the source of all of the exteroception, even though you're perceiving the outside world, that perception is inside of you. All of the things that you've ever perceived outside of you were interpreted and brought back inside of you. And you really can't find where you stop, because as you look out into the world, all that you find is you, more of you, as your perception is centered around your experience. If you look for someone else in the world, all that you ever find is yourself. All of the humans, all of the beings, all of the forms that you've ever perceived in the world were ultimately perceived inside of you. And so we use words like interoception and exteroception. But when you look at the source of those perceptions, when you look at where those perceptions are, they're actually all inside of you, even though you're perceiving outside of your skin. The center, the control center of all of that is inside of you. And so if I tell you when eating a banana that it tastes like a banana, and then you eat a banana and you tell me, yes, that tastes like a banana, there is actually no way I can verify that what you tasted and that what I tasted is the same thing. We have no way, it is impossible for me to know what a banana tastes like to you. So you can let that sit for a little bit. And so as you start expanding on that concept, one thing becomes clear. What I've been feeling, what I've been seeing, what I've been experiencing when I experience the world is me. Because there is nothing else to experience. And we tend to talk about it in different ways. And so when you see someone and you say, I really, really like that person, because when they're there, I feel joy. They bring joy to me. What you're really feeling is your own joy. They're allowing you to feel the parts of you that you associate with joy. But we, as human beings, tend to associate those sensations and those feelings outside of us. And so we see the person, and because we have an exteroception experience of that person, we then have an interior experience of joy. But both the exteroception of that person and the interoception of joy emanate from us. They both come from the same place. And so what you're experiencing when you're experiencing anything for someone else is that when you're in the presence of that person is allowing you to feel the parts of you that you associate with that person. Now, if you look at that from a spiritual perspective, what that means is that we're all reflections of different parts of ourselves. And it's hard to describe in words, but the idea to get to is that because all sensations, emotions, all of your perception is ever inside of you, what you feel when you feel the environment, when you look at a flower and you're struck with awe, is the odd part in you that is brought alive by the presence of the flower. But the flower itself doesn't have any awe qualities. And so when you think about it, you will never experience anyone in the world as they truly are. And so if I meet you, there's no way to know what a banana tastes like for you. And that means that I have an experience of you that is my own, that really has more to do with me and how I perceive the world than it has to do with you and who you really are. What I feel when I see you are the parts of me that I've associated with you. And we tend to get attached to people because we get attached to the feelings that we've projected on them through this process. And because it's happening outside of us, because our senses are perceiving outside of us, and because language has created these labels and these compartments, we think of those things. We think of all of the things we feel and all of the things we perceive as being outside of us, as opposed to all of it being part of you. And this is the game we're all playing. And in a world where you own every perception and you own everything, when you meet different people, you have to remember that what you're feeling are parts of you. And so if you meet someone and suddenly you're struck and you're like, oh, I feel sadness when I see this person. I don't know why. I think they're sad. Well, what you're feeling is the parts of you that are sad, that resonate with that person. And so when someone is lonely and they go out in a crowd, they often propagate loneliness because people will stay away from them because that person is feeling lonely, and through the energetics, other people will perceive that loneliness. And because other people don't want to feel the parts of themselves that feel lonely, the loneliness that is in all of us, well, we shy away from them because we're trying not to feel the things that are in us that make us uncomfortable. It has nothing to do with them or what they might be as a human being, but it has a lot to do with what this person is sending out in the world. And because they're sending that out, then other people are shying away from feeling those parts of themselves in their presence. And so there's a lot of interactions that look very different once you start looking at life through that perspective. And so that is the second part of the process.